Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Soss number 208 hinge in a US14 finish. The name Soss is synonymous with concealed hinges and has been for decades. I don't know how many decades Soss has been on the market, but several would be my answer. A 208 is a mid-grade size hinge. This is what a 208 is in a US14, which is polished nickel. Very attractive finish that you can see here, with the exception of my fingerprints. I apologize. The first thing I did was put my fingerprints on it. Very nice finish. So a 208 is the number is the size of the hinge and of course its application, but a 208 would be intended for a very particular, specific sort of installation. And I'm a big fan of Soss. I'm a fan of them because I'm not intimidated by them. Whereas I speak to carpenters who are neither are they intimidated by Soss. Intimidated means the process by which to mortise these into the door. I speak to other people who wouldn't dare think of using a Soss hinge because of the level of possible complexity when it comes to mortising for these. But I'll tell you, there's nothing unusual about these. You only have to observe the backset of the hinge. You know, as long as you have the distance from the face of the door to where the prep starts, if you don't exceed the maximum allowance, you'll have no problem with these. And then at that point, all you have to do is maintain your center line or the top of the door to the top of the hinge on the frame and on the door. And if you do that, you're in perfect shape. So there's really nothing intimidating about these. And because also it's only a two-step process to install these. You mortise, you route or mortise for the body, and then the plate. They fit right in. They're great. They're incredibly capable of carrying heavy loads. They are concealed. You never see them. A lot of people will want center-hung pivots because they don't want to see the hardware. Well, that's great. The problem with concealed pivots, though, is you'll generally have to bullnose or radius the door edge, and there's no function of intermediate pivot when it comes to center hung, whereas Soss gives you, assuming single acting is what you have in mind, gives you completely concealed applications, and you can put hinges in the standard locations that will allow you to maintain a warranty on the door for the requirement of properly hanging it. Now, a 208 is going to be for a smaller door, most certainly, a thinner door that's lighter. But that logic applies to the 216, the 218, and the 220 series hinges that are for heavier doors. So first of all, a talk about the different finishes that this is available in. 208 US. You're going to be able to do this in a in an oil rub bronze type finish, polished nickel, satin nickel, black, polished chrome, satin chrome, polished brass, satin brass, antique brass. So 8 different finishes on this little hinge. And right there. I've actually had people tell me that they didn't think Soss hinges were very durable. I have hung, I kid you not, we've hung hollow metal, 14 gauge hollow metal doors with granite applied to the face of the door on Soss. And no problem with the weight. No problem. The inventor, the founder, the owner, someone at Soss had once said something to the effect, I don't care how heavy the door is, just keep throwing Soss hinges at it. And there's a bit more to the discussion of how heavy the door is that we'll go into, but there's some logic there. I did, in the recent past, have to sell a client 2 new Soss hinges because they were bent. The hinge leaf and the door leaf were askew. You could literally see how bent all the knuckles were. And I said to the contractor, how did that happen? I mean, did someone vandalize did they do chin-ups on the door? And I was expecting him to say, no, I have no idea. But turns out it's a door that's a bookcase, no problem for the hinge. Turns out the children were sitting on top of the bookcase attached to the door. So you had you know, I don't know how heavy the children were, but they were discovered sitting on top of that. And yeah, the 210s or 212s, I forget the hinge. I think it may have been, actually it may have been a 208. It did bend because of that sort of application. So let's switch to the screen view and take a closer look at what this hinge is actually all about. Okay, so this is the item that we're looking at here. Extended description information here. We've got a cut sheet. We've got a line art drawing showing some basic dimensions, a video from the manufacturer. And let's start with just the extended description. The 208 is ideal for use in wood or metal applications. If you're using this in a metal application, I could you know, think that you might be building some sort of a custom iron gate where you want concealed hinges. And if you need machine screws, you'll need to specify that. We'll have to order those from the factory accordingly. Not a problem, but it's going to come with wood screws if it's not specified. This mid-range door hinge will provide superior appearance and durability. Many applications they're used in where the end user wants a flush fit, compact size, and smooth operation. It will go to 180 degree, provided there's no casing or wall condition that prevents that. Minimum material thickness is 1 inch. 8 by inch and a quarter wood screws are included. Now what they're saying here is when you're pre-drilling your holes, they want to have a, they're going to want to have a different hole size for a softer wood versus a hard wood, like a deciduous species, maple, a leaf-bearing tree, rather than a pine or a needle-bearing tree. And you're going to make those holes slightly larger in a hardwood rather than a softwood. Drill sizes are what they're referring to, not fractional sizes. A drill size, a drill index in sizes would be an exceptional way to go about doing this. If you needed machine screws, it would be a number 8. It doesn't have to be a 32 thread, but it'd be a number 8. You know, it'd be a number 8 diameter screw. But I'm sure 32 thread is what you'd be using. Now the cut sheet. Let's take a stare at the dimensional properties. The A, the B dimensions, C, all of these lettered dimensions are now on the cut sheet. Let's take a look at that. So the cut sheet will give you the dimensions that you require. This is going to act as your machining template as well. And there was one cardinal rule when it comes to Soss. So when the door is open to 180 degree, you have to, you're going to need let's see here now. That 5/32, if exceeded, door may not open, which is right here from the edge of the hinge leaf to the back set. Okay, you can't exceed that. 5/32, you know, basically going to be just heavy on 1/8 of an inch. So it has to be fairly close to the what would be the pull side of the door. So be mindful of that. Observing all of these dimensions will prove to be, you know, crucial. You know, you can have it a little bit closer, but if it's more than 5/32, you may not get the door open very far before you start to have a substantial problem. So what I had said earlier about prepping for the material, I broke it down into 2 steps: the body preparation and then the plate preparation. So when you study this template, you'll notice that everything you need to have is indeed here in front of you. So if we were going to route this door and frame, I would do it in 2 steps. I would route the deep portion, which would be 1 11/32 wide, or long, I suppose. Then it would be the width of the material, and they only give 5/8. So we're going to drill 1 11/32 long, 5/8 wide, and then we're going to we're going to center that a 1 and 11/32 on the center line of the hinge and achieve what we're doing in both directions. 5/8 this way. Then the other question is the depth, 29/32. Okay, so now you have all of this prepped. Then reset your router for 9/32, and then go the entire 2 3/4 overall height. Make it 1 3/8 from the center line up 1 3/8 over, and then you've got a really great preparation in your door. And that's it's that simple. It's no different than hinges where when you mortise your jamb, if you go from the underside of the header to the, let's just say, the center line of each hinge, you have to deduct 1/8 of an inch on your door, because if you're measuring from the top of the door to the center of each hinge, because of that 1/8 of an inch margin between the two. 30-second clearance in bottom of mortise when your hinge is closed. It doesn't immediately occur to me what they're referring to. Oh, yeah, the yeah, well, that's I don't think there's they it is unclear to me what they're referring to here with these, with that reference. You know, that is they're showing the access hole for the pin that drives and holds the hinge leaves through the hinge itself. I've never taken any sort of special accommodation for this whatsoever, so I've not run into what that issue is. But we've just covered all of the important dimensional properties. They give you other dimensions that you don't necessarily need to know to mortise it. 1 5/64, don't necessarily need to know that center line of the screws. You don't need to know the projection of the leaves, the stacked plates when the door is to 180 degree. Now be mindful, if you have a applied casing, or if you have a deep inset, yeah, your door is not going to work correctly. You have to have basically a flush door installation for a Soss hinge to work, but that's really where you're going to find most of your applications for a Soss hinge. Now let's switch back to the page we're looking at. The link to the manufacturer's page here, we're going to hop in and take a look at that. Now this link will show you all the Soss products we sell, pages and pages of it. It will also show you the current product catalog. It'll get you a link to their website. So in the entire product catalog is where you're going to be able to see all of the other Soss hinges. So I'm just going to search for 208, and there are going to be 2 pages here, which is my go-to. These are the part numbers of the 100 through 208 on the next page, 212, 216, 218, 220. You get into these bigger hinges, you're dealing with 1 3/4 thick doors at that point. And that's all fine and dandy. It gives you all of the dimensions, okay, your lettered dimensions, and you can review all of that. That's super nice. The most important document that I usually hit first is what they call their NEMA Graph. This file right here. It's also in the full line catalog, and this file is what allows you to review the hinge number, okay, based on the door width and door height that you're dealing with. Let's say you're dealing with a 36-inch wide door. Okay, you're going to be right down about here somewhere. And let's say you're dealing with 100. Let's say you're doing a 3080. Let's just say it's 150 pounds. You're going to draw that line up basically to 150 pounds, then come straight across, and you can see where you fall in. You're going to be able to use, with these minimum door thicknesses, you're going to be able to use smaller hinges, but you're really going to be over forgive me, you're going to go from 36 to 150, and you're going to come up over here somewhere. You're not drawing that line straight. So you're going to come on a straight line from here to 150, over to here, then straight across. So you're really dealing with the 216, 218, or 220. So when you're dealing with the full-size doors, you're always going to be dealing with one of these three sizes, and realistically a 218. That's for 1 3/4 thick doors, where you're going to be dealing with the quantity dependent on the weight, but you're going to follow industry standards when it comes to height. Doors up to 60 inch will require 2 hinges. Then you add an additional hinge for every 30 inch thereafter. So if you have 7 foot or 6'8" doors, you're going to use 3 hinges. You get over 90 inch, like an 8-foot door, you're going to go to 4 hinges. And that's going to be the industry standard on that. So you want to follow that. And that is laid out right here as well. Soss puts into their paperwork the industry accepted guidelines when it comes to quantity of hinges based on door height. Okay. Now this catalog will allow you to review all things Soss, where I was at before, and I won't take you through that necessarily because you can review that. What Soss doesn't have, and I have been told they will never have, a 3-way adjustable hinge. The impression I get is they don't believe in it. They believe it's a fad. It's a bad idea. On one hand, I'm very tempted to agree with that. You don't need to fix what's not broken. These hinges are spectacular when it comes to concealed hinges. On the other hand, I am possibly in the minority when it comes to people whose opinion is less of the multi-adjustable hinges. And the reason I'm suspect of them is if you have metal screws on a door, a hinge, if you have threaded in ball tips on a hinge, if you have set screws and decorative hardware, you know all of that comes loose over time. And I'm not really sure how comfortable I am with a 150-pound door being relegated to the health of that set screw, it basically is what it is, or that adjusting screw, with some thread lock applied to it. This Soss hinge does not move, cannot move, I mean, unless your children are sitting on top of the door, but it's not going to give you a chance for it to sag or fatigue or need to be adjusted. I believe that the adjustability is attractive to people because it will permit them to be less than exact when it comes to their machining. And that I find to be the obstacle with a lot of folks. What I say to that is be exact with your machining, or have a door shop make the material for you. These hinges are substantially less expensive than the 3-way or 3D adjustable Sugatsunis, Tectis, and other people make them as well. And I've had this conversation on my forgivings when it comes to the possibility of using those 3-way hinges, and I've been told that there's been no maintenance problems with them whatsoever. So, proceed accordingly. I believe that it's a level of comfort and familiarity as well. People like those 3-way hinges, even though they're double the cost, because they can adjust them. And there's no doubt that doors need adjustment over time, and there's no adjustment with these hinges. If your frame moves, if whatever happens, it's just fatigue on hardware, and needing to adjust doors is a fatigue or a failure of the hardware that's hanging the doors, namely butt hinges. These Soss hinges don't sag, is the bottom line. They can do fire-rated material, they can do stainless, etc. And as you go through the catalog, you might find things that are interesting, such as their spring closer. You can do a closer in a 218, a 216, and a 220 size. I did a high-end salon where those were used. Recommended spacing. This is coming out of European standards, where they put 2 hinges up at the top, and that is by far the recommended method of installation, because 70% of the weight of the door is hung on that top hinge. So definitely, if you can, put 2 up at the top, and I don't think you'll have any trouble. If you're doing, you know, doors with 4 hinges, then space them equally according to what the manufacturer says. Here's that reasoning why your E dimension can't be exceeded, because you'll have trouble with that door opening. Now, one accommodation that must be made when it comes to Soss hinges is if you're installing overhead door stops or holders or overhead friction holders on a door, the templating must be accounted for, because what happens in a Soss installation is right there is the vertical axis of pivoting. Well, that vertical axis of pivoting kind of floats through the opening. Whereas a hinge barrel, it stays. A pivot, it stays. That vertical axis of pivoting doesn't move. That's going to float. That vertical axis of pivoting is for sure going to float. Actually, the way that it's going to work is it's going to start life over here and then come, well, it's going to just do this. It's going to start out life here with the hinge closed, and it's just going to arc over to here to 180 degrees. So that's why you do need to account for that movement of the door in a somewhat in a certain type of elliptical path, and it needs to be accounted for in your overhead stop. So be mindful when you order that material, you specify them based on the hanging method, and then they will be templated correctly. And also be mindful, they generally cost more. These are barrel hinges, very small little hinges used, same concept, but holes are drilled, and then you tighten a set screw that's down in here, and it will force these barrels to separate and tighten in the opening. A quadrant hinge, sewing machine tables, you might see a quadrant hinge, anything that lifts up. Those are nice. Magnetic door holders. And the rest of the catalog is for you to review, with the final thing to show you would be the templates. No need to stress over mortising Soss for hinges. They will sell you the 208 IT. You want the template made by them, they will sell it to you. You nail it onto your door and frame. These 2 pins that are here are your body, and then you will remove them to do your plate prep. You're as right as rain. You do need to have the proper collet diameter and router bit for all of that to work. So be mindful, all that needs to work. But if you're a carpenter and you use a router, that will be second nature to you. And if you're doing hollow metal door work, they will also sell you the reinforcements. Let's finish up this video on camera. Now, in conclusion, I hope that it certainly does come through this video that I am definitely a fan of Soss hinges. I like them. They're simple, they're straightforward. They're, you know, the first time you mortise them, the second time you'll be an expert. I find them to be incredibly durable and reliable. The people at Soss are generally no-nonsense individuals. You send an order, they ship the material out. Sometimes you do run into problems of lead time with certain finishes. Black sometimes can be a run on lead time, but nonetheless, just feel free to reach out to us and we will check stock for you. And I'd like to hear your feedback on my philosophical quandary when it comes to 3-way adjustable Tectis, Sugatsuni, whoever else makes those, and there are knockoffs of those as well. And then the good old-fashioned Soss hinge. I'd like feedback on that because I've not seen a 3-way adjustable hinge 20 years down the road and know how that has worked out for all parties involved. Curious to know. Don't believe they've been on the market that long yet, but we'll see. Any questions on the 208 in a US14 finish by Soss or any other Soss product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.